So after what seems like an eternity of waiting, Doom Eternal has finally made its way to the Nintendo Switch. The game dropped a few days ago. It was supposed to come out with the other versions all the way back last year. They were all delayed till 2020, but the others came out back in March, and the developers at that point mostly went silent on the Switch version. This went on for a long time, got to the point where many thought it may even be canceled altogether, and the only real update for it came to announce the game's release only like a week beforehand. So the big question is, of course, how does this Switch version of the game hold up? Is this another miracle provided to us by the port wizards over at Panic Button? Well, let's talk about it. Let's actually start with the negatives in terms of the visual aspects with the Switch version. We'll get that out of the way. Obviously, you're dealing with a much lower resolution, as well as frame rate than other versions. Textures are extremely low quality on a lot of the environments, as well as the enemies. Very much noticeable when you perform the gory kill finishers that bring the enemies right up to your face for you to chop them up. So when this happens, you get a really close look at just how much lower quality they are, especially once you do cut into them. The gore effects, their insides, I guess, are definitely extremely low quality. But that's to be expected with the Switch version. Now, what's surprising to me is all the positives. This is another Switch release that, could only be done by Panic Button. In terms of the low quality textures, they did a phenomenal job of beefing up the quality of things that you are going to focus on. A lot of the faces I thought looked really good, even if the rest of the model in some instances doesn't, because again, the face is probably what you're going to look at most. In the environments, while that pile of rubble probably looks pretty rough, you're not going to pay much attention to it anyway, right? Not to mention the fact that with this being such a fast-paced game, it's hard to really stop and focus too much on those smaller things. But now, when you have like a giant, demonic, glowing skull door that you're opening, they were able to keep so much of the detail in places like that I felt they were truly beautiful to look at. There are points in the game where I had to pause, looking around at my surroundings, and just be like, wow, I can't believe this is running on the Switch. The interiors mostly, like when you're in those more enclosed spaces, even on a big display, on a big TV, I think they're pleasant to look at. The problem is more so when you go outside. You're out in the open, have stuff way far off in the background, that'll look pretty fuzzy, pixelated. Again though, they know where to keep that detail. So even when you're someone like me who's playing this specifically, looking for those issues, looking to judge it on a visual level, I'm still extremely impressed. And going further with the character models, while they are a bit rough, again, detail where it matters. I had a big concern going into this about them toning down the dismemberment in that for this version, the way you just blow chunks off of enemies as you shoot them. Again, with this being a bigger, more open game with more enemies on screen than the previous title, I actually kind of assumed they'd dial that down. But no, you can blast all that flesh clean off of them, and that's important to me because not only do I think it looks cool, just blasting the flesh off your enemies, but it makes the gameplay just feel better. It makes your shots feel more impactful when you get that feedback of seeing the chunks of the enemy's body just fly off. So I'm just so happy that they were able to keep all that in there as well. And let's talk about perhaps the most impressive thing with this version. The frame rate. Yes, it's lower, it's 30 FPS, but it's a shockingly smooth 30 FPS. Like, I noticed very few frame drops, even in the super chaotic moments, which are aplenty in this game, which obviously that was another concern. Like, it's common for Switch games to struggle to chug when you've got a ton of shit happening on screen, and that's like almost all the time in Doom Eternal, so I was thinking that we may have some significant issues in that performance department, but another stunner, the Switch just powers through it. Now, of course, I'm not trying to say it feels as good as it does playing it in 60 frames per second on one of the other consoles or on PC, but that frame rate, again, is kept so steady that it feels as close to that as you're going to get. And I will say, during those more chaotic moments, I have heard those system fans really howling in the Switch sometimes. but still, it survives. I really don't know how they managed all this. As someone who plays a lot of Switch games, a lot of ports, the magic panic button is able to create on this hardware is just, it's something else. It really does feel like some kind of sorcery. To touch on the gameplay a bit, in case you're someone unfamiliar with this game, it's a very old school inspired first-person shooter, extremely fast-paced movement, running and gunning, blasting the minions of hell at a rapid rate, like, of course, the older Doom titles, as well as titles like Quake from back in the day. This, to me, is what FPS gaming is all about. I'm considered to be not a huge fan of this genre because I don't really like a lot of the more popular franchises like Call of Duty and Battlefield, but growing up, this was like one of my favorite genres because of games like this. And I've absolutely loved both of these new Doom games to pieces. There's also a fair amount of RPG elements in the game. You can upgrade and augment your guns to give them different firing options, like adding grenades to the shotgun, a homing system to your rocket launcher, as well as power up your suit, giving yourself more health, armor, and that. The only complaint, more so contested issue I find with this game when people discuss it is the resource management in it. Basically, you're doing a lot of shooting, obviously, and you're getting hit a lot, probably. But you don't really have a lot of bullets or health. Everything constantly seems to be running out, but you can also acquire these things really fast. Some people don't like this aspect, but I think it's great and forces you to use a lot of your tools effectively. Like there are different methods to get ammo versus health, armor, etc. For instance, the chainsaw makes enemies turn into an ammo pinata. You have a flamethrower attachment that when you set guys on fire, they drop armor. So you sort of need to use these things wisely, maybe combo them appropriately to stay on top of things. Like with the flamethrower, I like to just hit a bunch of weak enemies with it and throw a grenade at them to get a huge surplus of armor really quick. And it also forces you to use all your weapons because, again, ammo keeps running out. You're going to be switching between them pretty regularly. So you got to learn which ones are best on which enemies and not just rely on, like, your favorites. I think this is actually a positive to the experience, keeps you on your toes. But again, I know some aren't huge fans. But yeah, overall, Panic Button has proven once again that they are Nintendo Switch port gods. This is another shining example of exactly what the Nintendo Switch is capable of, pushing it past, honestly, what I thought its limits were. These guys seriously should just be working on every major Switch port project in some fashion. Like, even if they don't handle your entire port process, like, at least give them a call and ask for some pointers, because clearly they know something that seemingly everyone else doesn't when it comes to unlocking the potential of the system. Nintendo themselves should really have eyes on these guys for, like, not even necessarily buying the studio. I mean, if they were going to buy someone, this would probably be, like, the studio to buy, in my opinion. But, like, getting them under contract to just be making Switch ports as often as possible. Like, there's just simply nobody who's doing a better job, even as close to as good of a job porting games to the Switch. And yeah, like I said, Doom Eternal is just more proof. I mean, you look at this resume, these games, Warframe, who's doing a better job with the Switch than Panic Button? I don't think anybody. Not only do I think anybody, I don't think anybody's doing, again, even as close to as good. That's why I'm saying these guys, they're literal port gods when it comes to this system. So yeah, obviously, I recommend this game extremely highly. This is my favorite FPS game of the entire generation on any platform, and the Nintendo Switch version is a damn good port of it. This is easily, in my opinion, the very best shooter you can currently play on the Nintendo Switch. No question about it. You should pick this up if you can, so you can rip and tear on the go. My only real complaint about it, as I've said before, is that we didn't get a physical version of it. Hopefully, sometime down the line, we'll get a physical card of it, because especially now after seeing how amazing of a port it is, it's a shame for us to not be able to buy a physical version. And with that, this video is a wrap. Let me know your thoughts on Doom Eternal for Nintendo Switch in the comments. Are you currently playing the game? And how do you think this Switch port holds up? Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this discussion of Doom Eternal on Nintendo Switch. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. If you want to keep the conversation going, hit me up on Twitter at JohnnyZakari. And join my Discord, ChiGuy and Friends. Link to both in the description below. And as always, thanks for watching.